I could blame a lot of people, but I do blame myself. I voted for this nonsense in the sort of vain hope that there was actually some sort of strategy or some sort of plan.
I do regret voting at all. I wish I'd just stayed right out of it. My only saving grace is I drew a horrible image on my polling card, and hopefully it didn't go through at all, but I expect it did.
What persuaded you to go in that direction then?
So I guess relentless gaslighting from the media.
Right.
I'm a Daily Mail reader. I read it because I understand it. I do read The Guardian. I like it. I know they don't have a paywall, but you have to keep signing up to read stories and stuff. It's easy to go on the Daily Mail, and I understand the language they use.
Okay.
I don't particularly like the way they speak and the way people are. I tend to be a bit of a freedom fighter on there. And
okay. But that is your
change opinion.
So it's it's a simple ease of access, really, that explains.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they did. They relentlessly gaslighted us, and it's not about people. Where I come from, it's not a desirable area to live. Nobody wants to be here. But all our work went. All the factories went. We lost the Tam Brands factory. We lost sewing factories. We lost credit card making factories. They just all went, and they were a little bit semi-skilled. So we've gone from just working in supermarkets and finding jobs where we can and driving. A lot of the people, we were promised our jobs back. We were promised semi-skilled work. We really thought we were going to start making things again.
The more seductive the promise, the more tempting it is not to look too closely at the detail, I think, sometimes.
Yep, and when you don't understand politics, the way it's so cloudy, opaque politics, it's just, especially if you understand the Daily Mail and you can't understand completely the Guardian and stuff, and you haven't had that kind of education, you're just left with what the hearsays and gives and what everyone's talking about. Yeah,
and I suppose the more undiluted your environment is, the more, the fewer people you encounter who are going to take it. Because this is something I discovered. It's lovely I'm not going to patronise you, Julie, by saying that, because you're clearly very intelligent, and I understand what you're saying about newspapers and education, but you'll also, I hope, let me say that I can just tell by talking to you that you've got no worries on that front, but you think that you do. You think that you do, and that's part of the contribution to the conversation. But I remember being stunned by people who were adamant that everybody agreed with them. And it took me a while to realise that every single person they met did agree with them, whether it was in the pub or online or in the the canteen at work. That's what you're describing, an almost unchallenged position reached by gaslighting or by media lies, but unchallenged by...
a community formed.
Exactly that, yes. And it became part of people's identity.
We all, But that's exactly what happened. But the difference is, the morning that vote came in, and it didn't go the way everyone wanted it to, it wasn't until that moment that we were all the dregs of the universe now.
How do you mean?
It wasn't... I remember my sister, she didn't know whether to vote Brexit or Remain. Yeah. She was really flip-flopping right until the very last minute. And then she chose to vote Remain. And then as soon as the vote came in the next day, it was all... the tables had turned, and there was a gang of nastiness on everyone that had voted Brexit. For whatever reason, it just completely turned. Oh, okay. And then we were all like turds in the swimming pool. But we weren't before that.
Well, I think today's been helpful, hasn't it, for reminding us of all the because I'll use your phrase once. There were some very big turds in our swimming pool who were very, very, very prominent Brexiters, and those
shouldn't. Yeah, they shouldn't have been allowed.
No, they shouldn't have been allowed in the swimming pool in the first place. Let alone afforded a special lane and a synchronised swimming coach. But
this vote was too big for us.
Yeah,
was
for me. I wasn't qualified to vote in the referendum. No. Not really. I would be now, but I wasn't then.
I could blame a lot of people, but I do blame myself. I voted for this nonsense in the sort of vain hope that there was actually some sort of strategy or some sort of plan, some master plan that would kick in once we left. Basically based on my own experiences in the construction industry, where I saw a market flooded with a lot of cheap labour. Now, to be honest, that's probably more to do with unscrupulous UK employers than it is to do with the poor people trying to earn a crust.
I'll tell you what, mate, it was a lonely furrow making that point. Because I remember driving through Hammersmith, of all places, and seeing workers congregating on a street corner being picked up in the morning by crews. And I thought that's the problem. That should be illegal. I think it was actually illegal, but that was not a consequence of being in the European Union. It was a consequence of letting employers do whatever the hell they wanted, which is, of course, what all of the think tanks that encourage Brexit do, as long as the employers are enormous rather than just small operators.
Absolutely. And I think it was easy to get tied up in all of that as an argument, failing to realise and remember that these things are best changed from within. And if you're not inside something, how can you change it? And I'm very angry with myself over it as a decision. And, I thought it was very interesting this morning to hear Guy Verhofstadt, I think his name was,
yes,
talking about the possibility of a door being open. Now, there is no reason for the European Union to leave a door open. What's done is done. But I believe that they could start by opening that door. They could start a sensible debate in this country that could bring all politicians who are completely failing to identify with it and recognise it for fear of losing votes, that the EU could put this thing firmly back on the table. And they could do that. Now, because there would be benefits for everybody in all of that, but what it would do for this country is it would stop the deniers, and there are so many of them, and unfortunately most of them are running the country.
Do you not think it needs to go a bit further? I mean, I don't know how much further it needs to go, but what point would Jacob Rees-Mogg say to the BBC, actually, do you know what? I don't think I will come on today.
Well, he won't. I don't suppose he ever would, but then who cares? Ta-ta.
And don't let the door hit you on the backside on your way out. I don't think I look at Starmer's position a lot, and I understand it. I have some sympathy with it, but it's far from undiluted sympathy. I don't know that it's a fear of losing votes that's the problem. I think it's still a fear of how many of the same mouthpieces that sold Brexit would treat a politician publicly acknowledging its complete idiocy. Because you've got the egos of newspaper owners, you've got the orders of Rupert Murdoch, you've got the Paul Dacre over at the Daily Mail. These people are never, ever, ever going to take responsibility for the consequences of their actions, which means that they will go after anybody who's pointing out the consequences of their actions like a rat up a drainpipe, Andy.
True, but who has the evidence and who does not? And that's what we've got to focus on now.
That was true in 2016, mate, and it wasn't enough for you. Or it wasn't actually, was it? No, it was. That's not fair. It was contradictory forecasts, some of which were coming from experts and some of which were coming from idiots. But how could you tell the difference at the time when most of the media was treating them as equal and opposite forces? That's why I don't think you should be angry with yourself, Andy. What if I pushed you? If I pushed you to put a name on the list, not your own?
Well, it's got to be Boris, isn't it? But as a flagship, I wanted to vote for somebody who would pull the trigger one way or another because I thought the damage that was being done politically to this country was horrendous. Having said that, I was foolish to believe that there was a plan, and I bought into that, and I feel daft for it now.
I blame the Eurosceptics in the Tory party way back to when Cameron and he had the referendum to pacify the right wing of the party because UKIP were taking all of his votes. And it was the most ridiculous referendum we could have held on a 50-50 basis.
Yes.
It should never have been 50-50 on such an important matter. And it's the likes of the Eurosceptics in the party, like Peter Bone, Bill Cash, Rees-Mogg. It's the old guard.
Who were there all along and managed to move over a period of 20 or 30 years from relatively ridiculous to the driving seat of the entire party. So I've known Bill Cash since I was a kid.
Yes.
I'm very good friends with his youngest son and remain so. But I kind of thought, Bill's a good egg. I like Bill. It can't be that bad. I even read his book on the Maastricht Treaty, would you believe, Josephine? That's loyalty. And I did that thing. I wouldn't put him in the same category as Peter Bone and Rees-Mogg. Maybe wrongly, maybe I'm being naive or unduly loyal. But he was one of the people that made me think, well, it can't be quite as bad as everybody else says, because good old Bill's written books about it. He really knows what he's talking about. He thinks it's going to be brilliant. That's the danger. The people that you kind of semi-trusted or that you didn't look at askance telling you it was going to be a good idea.